This episode, repair or replace? That is the question. In this episode, the Handyman Pros have a discussion about repairing or replacing components in your home. Larry and John give some practical advice as to process, how to determine do you repair or you replace, what are the upsides, the downsides, and maybe some hidden concerns that you haven't thought about yet. Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros radio show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This edition's entitled Repair or Replace? That, my friend, is the question. To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy, John. John, do you have any good stories from this week?
Oh, Larry, hey,
did I get you out of bed? I'm just checking.
Do any good any stories I can tell on the podcast
that are clean? Yes, those kinds of clean stories. Yes.
Yeah. Let me think. Well, I was repairing actually some other appliances here, and actually I was just changing out some plugs on the appliances, where they were starting to fray at the end.
Why, you didn't want to leave them out for a shocking experience?
Yeah, you got to, dragging around the like a vacuum cleaner with exposed wires and running across the floor and everything.
Just make sure the cat licks on it. Never mind.
Right.
Or the dog. I'll be non-discriminatory.
Drag it through a puddle in the kitchen or something.
Right.
And I just then we got to talking about this show, and I was thinking that after all the things that I've repaired around here and the longevity that I've gotten out of some of the appliances, and we're going to talk about some of that. I thought it'd be a good show to we were talking about it. We thought it would be a good show to talk about. Do I repair or replace some of these items?
Yeah, and me being a process guy, I'm like, we in our household, we run a bit of a process on it, right? So I want to just give a little bit of background. So when John and I go out to do many of our handyman jobs, oftentimes there are people ask us about things. I mean, I've had this experience myself. I'm going to give you a good example. Someone brought me a shovel, and they said to me, can you replace this shovel handle on it? Now, folks, if you've not bought a shovel in a while, this was a lower-end shovel, right? A lower-end shovel is about how much money, John?
No, well, I haven't bought one.
$20. They're like $20.
Yeah, I was going to say $20, $30.
Okay, so $20 or $30. So this shovel was a vintage shovel. I don't know how old it was, but I'm just going to say that it was a rounded shovel, right? The round shovel's like a normal kind of regular shovel. Except this shovel, the blade of the shovel looked like a metal-eating rat had eaten the whole edge, and about half the blade was cut back, where it was just either rusted or it had been worn through, right? As you shove it in the dirt, you actually take a little metal off every time.
Yep.
Anyway, person wanted me to change the handle out. I gave it about 5 minutes worth of effort, and I couldn't get the handle out. And I looked at the customer and I said, do you want to continue at $75 an hour to take this shovel head off for a shovel that, honestly, as I held it up and I could see that instead of being round on the top, it was kind of looked like a bad set of teeth. And I was like, or do you want me to just throw this thing away? And she was like, no, throw that thing away. We'll just go get a new one. And so it's kind of part of that thing about this process of, do you repair or do you replace? And then I thought maybe we'd get into some of those things. Like there's a lot of concerns here on different things, and some of them are emotional and some of them are real, right, John? I mean, some of them are, do you repair your 6-month-old something, or do you repair your 25-year-old something? And what are the pros and cons? There's a lot of issues involved here. So what do you want to start with, John?
Well, I looked at it like, you're talking about process, and, I was explaining that. I kind of look at it like you put all this stuff into the mix. It's like an equation for me.
Yep.
So there are certain aspects of your house that you can look at, that there's so many places to start, Larry, that if you have somebody come out and they take a look at a broken refrigerator, there's the emotion there that, hey, this thing's already 15 years old or 12 years old, and it doesn't fit my kitchen anymore. Really, it doesn't, the style of it, and so on and so forth. And then you're kind of faced with, do I
different
fix this
set
thing
of concerns? Yes.
Yeah, there's the same concerns. Do I fix this thing or do I replace it? Now you got that kind of emotion thing. For me, I will tell you that, I do a lot of this work myself. And, in my refrigerator, and I've told this story a lot, is that I just kept it going and going. And it really was the challenge, I think. To me, it wasn't the money that was saving.
Yeah, sure.
Because at some point, it's like, I got a lot of pushback here in the house, a lot, that said, hey, this thing's been, hanging around us for a long time. And I'm like, yeah, but, it's a challenge. I can fix it until finally, they're hermetically sealed. And once it goes, it's gone.
Yeah, then it's gone, right?
The refrigerant.
Yeah.
Anyways, so
that's the emotional side,
now,
right?
If somebody,
that's the emotion, right?
Yeah. So people come out and fix it. You're going to have to weigh. You're going to have to weigh how much, to fix, the longevity of how long you're going to get out of that repair, versus buying something new. In a simple, non-emotional case. That's the way I looked at it. Okay, for that.
Right.
So. There's other examples out there that are clearly, do I repair my old 30-year-old roof?
Yes, that's a really good example.
Or do I replace it?
Yeah, very, very. Let's use the roof just really quickly. So first off, in your opinion, and I'll give my opinion, but in your opinion, how much emotional issue is tied up in a roof? Yeah,
exactly. The only emotion that I ever had was that I changed from lousy construction contractor shingles to architectural shingles.
Was there any pushback in your family on that one?
That was really it, and it was me, and that was me. So I was not going to repair. I wouldn't repair that again.
Right.
Just got, that was it. It's time, because things can have a pyramid type of effect. Right, that you fix one thing and then something else is going to go, and a whole house of cards starts to come down, right?
Cascade
and especially
effect.
Especially with this example of being a roof, is that typically is what you're going to get yourself into. It's not like what I would when I repaired my refrigerator with a $25 part.
Right.
And I kept it running for another 10 years.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about a couple issues here. So roof, biggest issue on roof is age, right? So roofs have a natural life. Well, all things have a natural life expectancy, right? So everything doesn't, believe it or not, folks, Yep. Nothing in your home is designed to last forever, and that includes your foundation and your concrete driveway. Now, those have incredibly long time frames, but everything has an expiration date. And when you have to look at some things like, I'm calling this kind of a liability issue. We're talking about a roof. What is the first defense in your house for water intrusion, right? It's your roof, because water generally, in most cases, comes from rain that comes from above, right? So your roof is number one. It also has the effect of keeping the sunshine out and a bunch of other things. But the biggest issue is that water infiltration. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and you know, and like we were talking on the other show on roofing. You know, I mean, these are all the things that play into this, and like you said, it's going to have a certain lifespan to the roof,
right? And
you can only repair, you know.
You can't repair that wear and tear.
You can't, I mean, if you're going to repair it, you're going to have to replace. You know, I mean, at that age, just do the whole thing.
Do the whole thing, right? And I mean, and
now, if it's a new roof, and let's say a tree falls on it, or you had some kind of other thing damaged, that's a different story.
Different story.
But
so age matters, right? Age matters.
Yep. Right.
And so go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
keep going.
No, I was just going to say that, you know, so there's different things to think about for different aspects, right? You got the roof versus you got appliances, you know, and what can be fixed, what can last, and what's not worth it. And I think that's where I always boil down to, well, you know what do I really have if I fix this thing?
Right, exactly. So, and even like I was just going to use the example of a refrigerator, right? A compressor in a refrigerator, HVAC unit or whatever actually has a piston in it, right? And you know this.
Yep.
And just like in your car, that piston goes up and down a lot. I mean, basically all, on and off, on and off and on and off. And they actually do, believe it or not, they wear out. You can wear a piston out where it actually the rings get soft, just like in your car, and it no longer functions properly. So, like I say, that's that life expectancy, right? So everything has a life expectancy, and same thing, your roof does, everything does, right? So the question, I think, part of it is when we're talking about repair or replace is, what is the anticipated life expectancy? And or are we looking at something that's a simple fix? And you brought up another thing, and that was labor costs, right? So I know in my case, you and I know that if we do the work ourselves, right? What are we out? Well, we're out the cost of the part, right?
Exactly. So let me go back to my refrigerator example. So if I was not going to fix it and I called somebody in to fix it, I know basically what they would have charged me to fix it. At that point, with that age refrigerator, that thing would be gone.
Right.
Okay. Once again, it was me, my background, but it's just a challenge to keep it going. But so but for the folks out there that are listening, is that if you get somebody in and they're going to charge you $400 or $500 to fix your refrigerator, and your refrigerator's got the age on it. I mean, really, what do you have when you get done? You might, now you're at that decision point. So there's always kind of that tipping point.
Yeah, there's a tip.
For me, it was a $25 part.
Right. And a $25 part to me is a no-brainer. Now, let's take the whole style issue out of that picture.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Because for me, there's the third option that you didn't explore, but there's the repurposing of that refrigerator, meaning it goes out in the garage to hold beer or whatever, or soft drinks or something, or in my case, it goes to a rental property,
Yep.
But there's the repurpose on it too. So you don't necessarily, because for $25 to have a garage or have a refrigerator in the garage might not be a bad deal for you if you need it, right? I mean, that's just a repurpose to me. So
no, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is kind of it. So some of the things. So one of the other things we need to talk about ease of acquisition of parts, right, John? So on your refrigerator, you were still able to get the parts.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Because they're not always available, right?
I'll give you another example. That's very true, and I could get them, because a lot of the refrigerators and that are made pretty much very similar.
Yep.
So the parts had still been used, still being used and things like that. But I will tell you that, and I think I've said this before on the show, is that I tried to fix the microwave oven combination, which I knew when that thing went, it was going to cost me a lot of money.
Yep.
To replace. And that was like, I'll take that challenge any day to try to keep that thing going. Well, I could no longer buy the parts for it.
Right.
And that was the case of now it's completely obsolete and there's nothing left to do but, get rid of it.
Out it goes. You got a lot of scrap metal in that case. Yep.
And it was kind of a double thing for us, get rid of it, too old, and a new style comes in. Okay, great. But you're absolutely right. It's the acquisition of parts. Over the internet, you can get just about anything, but
not everything.
Not everything. Yeah. And this thing was that I couldn't find it. Now for that refrigerator, that old refrigerator, that thing was still cooking. That was still going. I could buy parts for that, but it was getting there. Let's just say that it was getting there.
So I wanted to bring up too. We touched on this just with the roofs, but let's take your refrigerator because this is a good thing. This is what I call kind of a liability issue, right? So if your roof fails, you have the potential to have many, many, many thousands of dollars of damage from water infiltration in your home, right? And that little tiny leak that you see in your roof, as we've found out through practical experience being handyman, can cost people thousands.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean more than the cost of the roof. Yeah. It can truly destroy a home. But even with the refrigerator, John, your wife at the time, I know because I remember you saying it to me, had some medicine that was pretty expensive, if I remember right, and it had to stay refrigerated,
and that thing
right?
was, I mean, it was just time to go. Now, this was but once again, this thing was beyond repair because it started to leak refrigerant.
Yeah.
So that was the problem. The other thing is, if you do have expensive medicines that you need to store or anything like that, you really need. I mean, this is all
part of that equation. Even just in a normal freezer, if you just think about the amount of food that you have in your freezer, right, or your refrigerator, either way, if you take them both, if it's a refrigerator freezer combo, and which most people have, by the way, and if you have that, gosh, have you ever added up how much money you actually have in your refrigerator as far as real money invested in food at any given time, right? And again, back to part of this equation. When the refrigerator is going to go out, when you have your freezer stocked with the most stuff. You just bought that side of beef and you got your 25-year-old freezer. When's it go out? The day you go on vacation.
Yeah.
And you come back to a freezer full of rotted meat and you go, oh, crap, I just spent $2,000 on meat. Now I've just lost it for a $500 freezer, right?
Ooh. Yeah, you come back after vacation with a side of beef in it.
But it happens.
So there's the body.
Yeah, so there's the body.
I think on my refrigerator, I think part of the warranty was they'll give you like $300 or $500 for spoilage.
Yes, of course.
So they've got that kind of got that baked into their equation for their warranties, on this thing.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. You really need to consider how much money that you have in that these appliances, if they go out, could cost.
Yeah, and this applies to anything. It's basically what is the potential liability, right? So if you have one of our favorites, right, John, clothes, your washing machine hoses, right? The hose that goes from your wall to your washing machine.
Yeah.
To not replace those hoses when you replace the washing machine, in my opinion, is penny wise and pound foolish, because those $25 worth of hoses, if they burst really any time,
buddy, you got a problem.
Right. So repair or replace. Well, they're you don't think about it, right? But folks think about it. John's talking about replacing little frayed plug ends, right? That can be catastrophic, right? I mean, we joked about it a little bit about dragging it across a puddle, or the dog chewing on it, or the cat chewing. But you hate to say it, but it actually happens. And I'm not saying it's going to happen a lot. I'm not saying it's a high risk.
No, in something like that, when you look at it and you say, wow, that little bit of fraying there. But if you're talking about a vacuum cleaner that's probably pulling 12 amps,
exactly,
that's a lot of that's a lot of resistance going through there, and that thing's going to heat up real quick if it doesn't get if it starts to fray up.
Right,
and you're going to turn around and have an issue. While you're vacuuming. And
this applies to almost all things in your home.
Yep.
There's some sort of potential. It's not, you just have to think about it, that stuff is, like my thing is, stuff is the way it is for a reason, right? We've talked about this over and over, but like just everything in your home has a particular purpose. It was built for a particular reason. And the reason is just depending on the object. But even like, let's talk about the grating outside your house. We already have talked about this a dozen times on the show. But if your grating sinks down on the house, now you have water intrusion into the basement. You just shore up that grating and bring it back up to where the water runs off the edge of the house. No more water intrusion in your house. So it was originally built with the grade going away from the house. Over time has done its effort and gravity's done its thing and it's brought it in.
Yep.
Now you have a problem. Take it back to the way it was. That's a repair. Would you call that's a repair?
Yeah.
Right? So you don't need to replace everything there, but you need to repair. You need to keep it up on a maintenance and ongoing basis, because that water getting into your basement can be far more costly than what it costs you to go out and spend a weekend raking out dirt or hiring somebody to go rake out dirt.
Yeah, so
right.
I think exactly, and I think going on that is that there's a lot of opportunities for people to upsell you on new water heaters.
Yes, because
based upon that very argument right there of water damage and where it's sitting,
fear,
and most of them are sitting either in your garage or your basement, and this is it's kind of funny. You can talk to 10 people and get 10 different lifespans on these things, but it's really easy to put the fear in you on these things. So Now, I'm not saying that just go repair things on your water heater, but you got to look at the longevity of how long that thing is, and but there's those opportunities that people will try to sell you new stuff. Like I was saying earlier, my buddy had his for about what 8 years, and he got talked into replacing it.
Which is. So I wanted to bring up one thing about that, and I'm going to call this environmental issues, right? And so it's actually personal. This is a personal decision that's done with where you live in mind, right? So different parts of the country, and John, you know this because we lived up north, right?
Yep.
Different parts of the country, even neighborhoods to neighborhoods have different concerns based on either the environment or perhaps the builder there's all kinds of different factors, but these are things that are out of your control, like the environment, for example. And the water heater is a great example. Certain places in the country, and it just depends, it's literally locality by locality. Certain water that actually comes into the house is either, it has a high level of minerals or it's slightly acidic or there's all kinds of things, but it can actually degrade the inside of that water heater faster than somebody in a different location, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So and that applies to a lot of things. How much chlorine is in the water? Personally, I like grain alcohol and rainwater. I find that to be the best. Anyway, sorry, that's a line from a movie. And if you know that movie, by the way, I'll send you a prize. If you go by locality, certain water systems have different water. So in your water pipes, you can have a different effect in a different location. It sort of reminds me of I just did a job where I did an inspection for somebody, and they had a leak on their main water line that came into their house. Well, they had just had their PRV valve replaced, right? And I'm like, that's odd, because and the plumber came out and he said, oh no, it's not the work I did on the PRV valve, it's the main line, because they happen to have polybutylene, right? So I asked the homeowner a couple of questions, and she works in insurance, so she's really good at this kind of stuff. She knows like kind of the lingo. She's like, nobody in this neighborhood has had their water lines replaced. I've never seen anybody had their yard dug up to have the main water replaced. And folks, we've talked about polybutylene before, and if it's very specific, and it's very specific to the water, to what's in the water itself as it comes into the house. Well, long story short, in my inspection, I found it to be actually that when he replaced the PRV valve, he used copper pipe, and it was just, in my opinion, it's my opinion, and I'm not a professional plumber, but the leak is between the polybutylene and where it goes up into the house, and he made the pipe just a tiny bit longer, and I mean, I'm talking about less than 1/8 of an inch, but it caused a drip to come out of that joint, and the drip is very, 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 very slow. But I believe that that's because of the fact that he moved the joint, and in that process, the joint has not failed, but it only takes a tiny crack, and this drip is one drip every 10 minutes. I mean, it's that slow, but it still leaves a spot on her basement floor. Anyway, that's environmental. You can't control that stuff. If everybody's water heater in your neighborhood goes out at 8 years, your expectancy is going to be 8 years. Okay.
Yeah. But my point here though is that there's you just have to research these things, because a lot of times it's easy to replace, okay, and it's an easy answer, but it's going to cost you money to do that instead of repairing things. And then you weigh both sides of the equation on that. Is it worth to repair it, or is it worth just to get rid of it and replace it?
Right.
I'm just the kind of guy that I just a lot of things I just keep going, because I'm that's my background is maintenance, and I just keep things going. But I think what I wanted to impart here on everybody is that if you just look at this stuff logically, and I'm sure a lot of those folks out there do that, because nobody's in this to go throw money around, and there's a lot of times that repairing it is just fine. It's a great, just perfect. Then there's other times you just got to replace it.
Right.
So I think that's part of what we're trying to get across here.
Yeah. I think, to put it, is there anything else we really wanted to talk about? I mean, I wrote a note here: work in facts, not emotion, right? So work with the facts at hand. Today, because of the internet, pretty much everything is accessible. You have you can get information very easily on any of these problems. You can probably find a YouTube video on how to fix things, even if you so choose to do these kinds of things. But part of the reason for the Handyman Pros radio show, right? We help you save time, money, and aggravation in your home maintenance and repair. That mantra comes out of the fact that we're trying to educate you on what are some things that can help you, what's easy, what's not easy, right? And some of these things we try to present facts because, we try not to live in the world of emotion. John, do we know how our brethren sell in the construction and repair business? They want to sell you, they want to upsell you all the time, right? The water heater's a great example.
That's my point. That's my point. Is that you'll never take emotion out of it. All decisions are made emotionally, backed up by facts. Okay, but I think at a point that because if it wasn't, nobody would be smoking. Okay.
Cigarettes. That is.
I will tell you that. You try to take the emotion out of it just for part of that equation. Okay. For me, it was, it was the design, these things got old. It was the design. Let's replace
John, that's it. Style. It's style.
Yeah, that's the style. Okay. And I understood that and I get that. But if you take that out of there, am I going to make the right decision? If I want to save money. If you had somebody come in, if the product is a $1,500 product and it's 12 years old, and I got to spend $800 to get it fixed, probably not.
Probably not. Yeah.
Okay. Right. But for me, if it's a $25 part, okay, great. And I think I took the emotion out of it. A lot of people here in my family didn't. So I was
going to say, how did that go for you?
So I had that.
How was the couch?
Yeah, 30 years old, I'm like, man, they don't make them like that anymore.
To every point, there's a counterpoint.
It's so old. It's so old. How long has that thing been hanging around here? You got to throw that thing out. And I said,
could we at least take the Jimmy Carter sticker off the side of the Jimmy Carter for president off the side of the refrigerator?
Well, I basically shot myself in the foot and I said, well, what do you think the museum said about the Mona Lisa? Hey, that thing's been hanging around here 550 years. Let's get rid of it. So, anyways,
how was the couch?
I'll tell you what, that refrigerator really was the Mona Lisa of the refrigerator. So, so I've done that with a couple of things, but you just have to be wise enough to say, okay, enough's enough, and get rid of it.
Got it. Anything else did we miss anything? Is there anything that we missed?
No, I think that was a good start, just to impart some of that, at least my experiences with those things.
Well, so Ailey was riding in the car with me the other day, and she said that my partner was getting old and I needed to replace him with her, and I told her to talk to you. She's flying over to your house to land. What are you going to do when that spaceship lands in your parking driveway?
Well, I don't know. Are they going to replace it or repair it, or what are we going to do with it?
I'm not sure. I think we take it apart.
Take it apart.
I think we take it apart. Well, folks, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or even if you don't like our jokes, it's okay. You can send us an email at questions@handymanprosradioshow.com, or go to our website, leave us a message. That's handymanprosradio.com. Join our Facebook group. That's at Handyman Pros, or follow us on Twitter at Handyman Radio. And we will see you all next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.